Yo, what's the crack? My name's Kieran, this is Spearhead Media. Today we're going to explore the world of thrash metal and how the genre communicates its punk roots through over-the-top artwork with vibrant colour schemes and an affinity for 80s slasher flicks. Decrepit zombie brandishing a gnarly medieval weapon, desolate and barren radioactive Mad Max style landscape, disgusting putrid and vibrant colour scheme that hurts your eyeballs. Yeah, you better believe we're going to throw all the trimmings on top of this one today. So I hope you enjoy this and I hope you learned a few tips and tricks along the way. Right, let's get right into this one. It's going to be gas. Right, what's the crack everybody? Kieran here with another Spearhead tutorial. This one's going to be really good fun today because you're completely unchained when you're making this style of thrash metal design. So with that in mind, I went ham with this artwork. This was originally a commission for a sweet UK band called Salticide, and then they changed concept halfway through development of the artwork, which is fine, it's all part of the game. So then I figured I'd take this unused concept and complete the artwork for the sake of some extra content for a tutorial and hopefully help a few people along the way. For this style we're going for, think Ed Repka. That lad is top of the game, he always has been. I'd say most thrash, crossover and death album artwork that you can think of off the top of your head that was made in the 80s is most likely Ed Repka. So for this we're going to build up a gnarly background landscape with a few tips like Art Breeder, generating stuff with the AI to get a painted feel, and using some NEOSTOCK and Envato Elements assets and 3D models for photobashing just to build up our figure. If you think of Ed Repka artwork, most of those album covers have one central figure, be it a zombie or like a warrior. So I'm going to develop a very strong character that will draw the eye as the main focus of this overall artwork, with the background and the setting and the lighting more or less just lending a hand to further accentuate how much that character pops out. So if this sounds like an artwork style that you'd like to get to grips with, then just keep watching and we're going to run through the whole thing start to finish. Let's go! To get started, I'm going to whip up an artboard of 4000 by 4000 pixels at 300 dpi, just so you get it nice and high quality should it go to print. Then I throw my Art Breeder image in the background, that kind of landscapey, mountainy looking thing, with a really cool NEOSTOCK bombed out city asset that I think looks sweet. I then play with my hue and my saturation just to get that sort of moody feel that I was hoping for, and I throw the Salticide logo in the top corner as a placeholder, so I know where the logo will go once we finish the design. I then start to take out my stock photos that I've gotten from Envato Elements and NEOSTOCK. Although I really like this figure and the bomber jacket and how it looks, I want this to be a zombie, so I'm using this cool 3D asset from NEOSTOCK just to see all the disgusting grit and bits of skin falling off. You know, this is a metal album cover at the end of the day, so we want it to look horrible. I'm using different hands and different weapons and different clothing and stuff, and basically what we're going to do is think of this as a collage if you ever did collage, whereas you're cutting out pieces of paper in collage. Photobashing is pretty much the same thing. In theory it is the same. We're cutting out different parts of different images and using them to make an entirely new image, whether it's a character or a landscape or anything. It's the same process in theory. You just need to make sure that the images and the sources you get these images from are legit, because if you don't own the rights, aka by buying some of these images or using license free images, you're gonna get in a lot of trouble if you try to sell them on. So that's just a good habit to get into from the get-go. Always make sure that the images that you want to use are fairly got. Don't lift them from other artists. You want these to be license free. And there's plenty of sources where you can get license free images. So since this is a thrash metal album cover, I wanted to bring a little bit of humor or playfulness into the design and the character that we're creating. So I'm trying to mash a load of different visuals together. For example, the cyberpunk gun, the medieval axe, the Vietnam sort of helmet. Then I like this skull, even though it's a pirate skull, I like the way it has the knife in its mouth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off the pirate hat and I'm going to lay it underneath my helmet, and then we're going to chop out bits just to make it seem like the skull is really wearing this helmet. And I'm just going to loosely throw it over the head of the figure here. If you save your file and then merge all of your figure layers onto one layer, then you can use liquify to kind of nudge and push things. But just be very mindful here, because if you have a straight line like in the axe there and you liquify and you move it, it'll bend and twist it and it'll look completely wrong. Now all the colors on my character are a little bit vibrant, so I've gone into my hue and saturation sliders and brought down the saturation just to get it a little bit more in line with our background. And although I'm happy with the general form and attitude of the character, I felt like it was lacking a little bit, so I'm going to bring in some chains and spikes and just give it a bit more attitude, and also play a little bit more on the thrash metal aesthetic. These spikes always remind me of Kerry King from Slayer, and I think they always will, although maybe it is a bit more of a black metal thing nowadays. They look so cool for this kind of thing. Here what I've done is I've laid the chains over on top of my axe, and I want it to be wrapping around. So with the chain layer above our figure, I basically use control and click the thumbnail of my figure layer, and that'll make a selection of the whole layer. And then just with my eraser, I'm just going to rub out the bits of the chain that are supposed to be behind the figure itself. And that way you can see it gives that three-dimensional kind of feeling of bits of the chain are going around, wrapping around the axe itself. Always playing with our levels just to bring out the contrast in these, and then giving them a nice black stroke for that illustrated sort of feel. Another trick I learned off a brilliant artist called Dusty Peterson is to put an adjustment layer above your entire artwork and make it a black and white adjustment layer, because if you can have your central figure popping out and looking nice and clear against your background in black and white, then it'll be totally fine in color. Now I'm using these absolutely savage zombie PNGs that are available at NEOSTOCK. What I'm going to do is try make it look like this guy is just waded through a battlefield, chopping his way through. Again, merging all of our blood splats onto one layer, making a selection of the figure himself, inverting the selection and deleting everything that's not on the figure. Then I'm using multiply as my blend mode to just really make it look like that blood is soaked into the character's clothing. I'm kind of playing with a lens flare here to give him sort of a Terminator eye, to make him look like there might be some sort of cybernetics going on and he's not just a walking zombie. Now I'm drawing on some extra teeth and detailing onto his face just using our brush tool, putting like an inner shadow on the teeth to give them a little bit more of a three-dimensional feeling, like they're rounded and not just flat. That's a nice little time-saving trick. Here again I'm going in with my liquify, and it was just a bit too much, so I opted to get rid of it. And you can see I'm nip tucking and changing some details here just by copying, making selection with my lasso tool, copying and pasting and bringing them down, and then using our spot healer brush just to kind of, I guess, blend it all in together. This is about the point where the concept was rejected by the band, and I decided, you know what, let's just finish it anyway. So here I'm just chopping out the axe because I wanted to go back to this like gnarly looking blade thing. I think it looks so post-apocalyptic and a little bit more thrashy than, say, a medieval axe itself. I'm using my hue and my saturation just to kind of match the colour with the rest of the figure here himself. I'm also using my burn and dodge tool to kind of lighten up parts and darken parts to sandwich the design together and make it really feel like one image. This is quite a destructive edit though, so bear that in mind. You might not want to rely too heavily on these tools, but they will get you out of a pinch. If you have a nice oil brush, you can use that brush and the smudge tool to give quite a painterly effect, and you can blend and fix things as you go. Again, don't go overboard with this because it can look absolutely terrible. Subtlety is key. Now I felt like the figure needed a bit of a belt and then maybe more chains connecting the gun to it to give it that extra Mad Max sort of feeling. So I'm just using a nice PNG and cutting bits off, using our burn and dodge tools to highlight certain areas and darken other areas to sandwich them nicely into the main image. I'm using a cool particle effect overlay that I got on NEOSTOCK, just to give the overall composition a little bit more movement, to make it seem like there might have been a recent explosion or something of that ilk. Now I'm throwing in a really cool 3D render of a castle that I got in NEOSTOCK as well. I almost wanted to add a bit of medieval feeling to juxtapose the Mad Maxy sort of vibe going on with the main figure, and I felt this castle was kind of cool enough because I can't remember what video game it was I was watching the trailer for, but it was post-apocalyptic in the future, but everything regressed to a medieval sort of vibe, and I thought that was so sick. To give the background a little bit more drama, I then added some glow by using our colour dropper to grab the orange from the fires and the lights in the background, and just use a 0% soft brush to brush on the glow where you think the light would be hidden. And to add to the overall drama of the full composition, I fire in some lightning in the background. Working with something as bright and as powerful as lightning, you want to make sure that the bits that would be highlighted are highlighted. So in this case I just took like turquoisey and blue overlay, which I've then used overlay as my blend mode and hard light I think on a couple of them to give it that real spacey, bright, bluey flash off the character and further add to the three-dimensional vibe. I then overlay the whole thing with a real cool lens flare that I thought just kind of set it off. After this I basically just color correct, and I'm trying to match my color together, and you can play with your color balance or your hue and saturation to make a wacky color scheme. So once you're happy with how this is looking, you're happy with the color, you're happy with the figure, the character, the composition, the background, the lighting. Once everything is all bulletproof, you can merge the whole thing onto one layer, and then we'll move into our filter gallery and give it that cool Xerox effect. I'm gonna flash a link up there in the top corner of the screen to my Xerox tutorial, which will have this in far more detail. So if you want to figure out how to do this for all of your artwork, please check that link. Then once you're happy with that, with the top layer, we're going to use multiply as our blend mode. So we're going to let the color come through, and it'll give it this really cool effect and makes it look like it was drawn, almost a comic book sort of feeling to it. Now, as you can see, I've got my logo up there in the corner, and I figured I'd just use my own logo as placeholder. So I figured I'd chrome it up in a way you might see a thrash metal logo chromed up. So if you want to learn how to chrome your logos in a metal kind of style, I'm going to leave another little link up there in the top corner where you can watch my tutorial on how to create a nice 80s chrome death metal sort of effect. And if you want to chrome up your logos but you don't have all the time in the world and you just want it done and dusted ASAP quick, I recommend a nice plugin called iCandy 7. You can get a free trial of this for 30 days, I think. You can play around with different types of chroming, different effects, bevel, the height of the bevel, the color, everything, and it will basically make it into a smart object for you. And then you can just like fart around and play with it again in Photoshop until you get the kind of effect that you want. I decided I'd fire like a gradient over this and use overlay as our blend mode just to give it a little bit more of a haze and color to it. You can see you can really play around with your different hues here and use your sliders to see in real time what you would like it to look like. And now to give it extra bit of realism and an extra bit of that kind of 80s vibe, I went into my lens corrector and I decided to give it a nice bit of chromatic aberration on the edges. Finally, to set the whole design off, just can't get the idea out of my head. I'm thinking like Terminator vision, you know, the heads up display, and I was kind of playing with the idea of having this character been lined up in the sights of like some sort of sniper rifle, someone in the distance that's about to blow him to hell. So to achieve this, I used some really cool Envato Elements assets that it's different types of heads up displays and stuff, and I was kind of cheating here rather than just making them myself, but I still didn't want to just grab one of these and overlay it, so I wanted to have a little bit more control, and I decided to make my own heads up display out of these assets, like, you know, putting the crosshairs in the middle, having it all lined up, making sure my weights are the same. This is almost photobashing, you know, I'm kind of chopping and changing and playing around here just to give it that like really cool effect. So once I'd laid this heads up display over my image, I brought it into an artboard of the same size, merged it all onto one layer, and then bitmapped it. And if you want to learn how to bitmap your designs, there's a little link in the top right hand corner to my tutorial on how to do that. So I got you covered in that end as well. I then just select all my white, bring that in, lay it over my image, and then I filled my bitmapped heads up display with a really vibrant green. I then duplicated my layer. I put a little bit of an inner bevel on the top layer, and on the bottom layer I used a radial blur to make it really seem like there was movement, and whoever is gonna gun down this character is like whew, swinging the gun, you know what I mean? And I was pretty stoked on that. I basically just took my heads up display, played around with it, put a little bit of a shadow on it to kind of break it up a bit, threw it underneath my logos, and then I was thinking, wham bam, thank you man, this is looking delish. So what I did then was I just merged my artwork onto one layer, gave it another little color correction kind of until I was happy with it. Finally, went into my lens correction again. I just like removed distortion, played around with my green and magenta, and added like a nice vignette on it, and I was really happy with how this turned out. So much going on and really mean and nasty artwork. So there we have it, like we're finished, done and dusted, and I think it turned out absolutely deadly. I really like building up a world like that and building a character, because at the end of the day, it's quite similar to concept art. They've probably given you a brief on paper of different things that they want and different bits that they want to include, and you just have to realize that for them. You know, you're the one with the skills, you're the one with the knowledge of the programs and the different processes. That's why I like to use a lot of the same tactics and a lot of the same kind of tricks as concept artists in terms of like photo bashing and building up our character that way. It's all of these things have been developed within the program itself in order to save our time and make our jobs easier, you know. As always, you know, these are just some of my processes that I've developed over the last 7 or 8 years. Nothing I've said here is the word of God. These videos are more so to get the creative juices flowing and to show what can be achieved and how you can develop things in an easier way than you might think. Like, I'm really trying to instill a bit of confidence in people here to show that these styles are achievable and it's not like, you know, black magic. that you need to sell your soul in order to be able to do, you know what I mean? It's all about breaking things down into manageable jobs and manageable processes. So with that said, I hope you've learned a thing or two here. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, give me a little like and subscribe. As always, there's free assets in the assets folder down below. And yeah, I'll love yous and leave yous. Thanks a million, take care, and I'll see yous in the next one.